Paul, man, welcome to the show, brother.
It's great to be here, Corey. How are you, man?
Doing wonderful. So we were talking before this, that we put this thing on. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your success. It's really neat to see someone that's just real, even though you've had so great success record, you put your pants on like everybody else. And I love that about you.
Yeah, well, I've had lots of setbacks. I mean, hey, I got a podcast called How to Lose Money. I think you were a guest, if I'm not mistaken. And we talk about failure, and we've certainly had a lot of that too.
Yeah, and that is the prerequisite, I think, to get success is you've got to be willing to fail a lot. We were talking about the other white meat, and I'll let you cue this up because I think this is what we're going to talk about, but I'm going to let you say it because you did it so well.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I guess my late 20s, they started this commercial thing, the pork industry. Pork is the other white meat. And I don't know if I ever believed that, but now I'm promoting mobile home parks. It's the other multifamily.
And that's it. Drop the mic right there.
Yeah, man.
There's more ways to Yuma than you'll ever know, okay, for everybody listening right now. And mobile home parks, lots of different ways to make money in the game right now. And so let's talk about that. Open it up and why you think it is the way to Nirvana right now.
Well, here's the thing. So I've been doing multifamily for years, and I'm being real here. I do not have as good of a system as you, Corey Peterson. I do not have the acquisition team you do. And we were beating our head up against the wall, talking to brokers, trying to get on-market deals. We'd occasionally hear about an off-market deal that didn't really work or whatever. But I was tired of beating my head up against the wall. And so we decided to look into mobile home parks and self-storage. And we were shocked that, there are 45,000 or so mobile home parks in the U.S., and roughly 40,000 of them are owned by mom and pops. Now, these mom and pop owners are great people often, but they're getting really old and they're ready to sell, and cap rates are so compressed, they had no idea they'd ever make this much money from their park. But these people generally don't have the resources or the desire or the knowledge to maximize the income at these parks and therefore maximize value. So we can often find that we can acquire a mobile home park, pay them more money than they ever dreamed, but then perhaps double or triple the value of the equity in a relatively short time by upgrading and by forcing appreciation. So I love mobile home parks.
You just hit the nail on the head right there. It's because you're dealing with the owner directly. It is a mom and pop's game, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
Because that opens up so many different avenues of, do you get creative with your financing and your structures?
Well, yeah, so the mobile home park operators we work with, my company's Wellings Capital, and I started to say the Wellings Income Fund. That's the fund name that we have. We invest in the very best operators we can find, people who already have the asset managers, the property managers, the team in place, the acquisition guys. And so what they do is they're often finding that these mobile home park operators remember what it was like in the 70s and 80s and 90s when they couldn't get bank financing, and they assume they have to offer owner financing. They've already been thinking that for years. When one of our operators makes an offer, sometimes they'll say, sure, and I'll owner finance it. And so that is part of the creative financing that makes this even better.
Wow. When you're dealing with those people, they may not want to have all that money right away because they're going to have a taxable event, right?
Yeah, and that's what we talked to them about, monetized installment sales and things like that in that case.
So how do you really get in and improve these assets? So what is it that you're buying? So set it up for us visually if you can. Because when I think of a mobile home park, I just think of a bunch of trailers in a spot. Like, that doesn't sound sexy.
No.
But this is not my space. So now take me to school here, Paul.
So, Corey, when I thought about multifamily, I wrote a book on multifamily in 2016 called The Perfect Investment, humble title. And we talked about value add a lot. We talked about improving the granite countertops. Adding granite or upgrading the cabinets and the paint and the fixtures and the lighting and the carpet. But you know what? I never dreamed mobile home parks could have something like that, especially when I thought about mobile homes I pictured growing up. And then I found out furthermore that mobile home parks, the best operators, didn't even own the trailers. They just owned the land. So how can you upgrade that? Okay, so I imagine adding a pool. Well, that doesn't add a lot of value. I mean, it's nice amenity. I imagine paving the roads and doing maintenance and maybe upgrading the clubhouse or adding a gym or a dog park. But as you know, Corey, those things, while they're nice, they don't drive a whole lot of revenue. I was shocked to find out what revenue driving opportunities there were. I'm going to start with an example. So on February 20th last year, we were in Louisville, Kentucky, and actually we were doing due diligence in January in Louisville, but we closed on a mobile home park for $7.1 million. Now, keep this in mind, the equity was about half, 50% leverage, 50% equity. And this park, $3.5 million in equity, in other words, this park had not even been visited by the owner in at least 5 years, okay? The guy who ran it passed away 3 states away in Georgia, and the owner's wife had not visited in 5 years or more. It was surprisingly well run considering that, but there were 50 vacant spots. They had apparently not raised rent in years, and because it was 25 to 35% below market rents, and the utilities were still being paid by the owner on 311 total lots. And so we saw a lot of opportunities for upgrade. Now, Corey, imagine this. We closed at $7.1 million February 20th. By February 26th, had an offer in hand of $9.5 million from somebody else who heard about it. And I'm thinking, okay, that's a 60 or 65% increase in the value of the equity in a week. Take it. The operator, our partner we invested with, turned it down hands down. He said, no way. He said, I can make so many more improvements than that in a short time. And he went to work. First of all, he passed the utilities back to the tenants. Now, you may think, well, those tenants could be mad and go somewhere else. Well, everybody else was already charging back utilities. So that was not an option for these people. So that was $150,000 a year in adding to the net operating income. Well, adding $150,000 a year to the NOI divided by a 6% cap rate is, what's that, $2.5 million increase in value of the park. And so he already got immediately, or quickly at least, back to that number the guy offered him. Second, he raised rents. And he didn't raise rents a whole lot because, you're not going to raise rents 35% to get up to market immediately, but he raised rents some. And then third, he started working on getting some new mobile homes in the park. Now, this is where mom and pop operators really fail. A great operator can go out and go to, let's say, Fleetwood or Clayton Homes or whoever, and they could get a financing program and bring in new or slightly used homes into the park. And then once they're on location, sell the home to somebody who might come in and pay $40,000, $50,000 for the home, finance it at almost 100%, and move right in. Now that creates a cash flow stream for the operator, of course, as you know. And well, he was only 6 months into this whole improvement program. His goal was to hit a $12 or $13 million value in 3 years. Remember, he paid 7.1 for it with $3.5 million in cash. Well, lo and behold, another operator who had a different strategy of buying and holding stabilized assets offered him some money. And we closed on this property right before the end of 2020, 10 months into owning it for $15 million, taking the $3.5 million in equity up to, I think, $11.5 million, and had a nice 340% IRR on that property. It's hard to get those deals these days, but a great operator can do it, right?
Not in multifamily. That's not happening in multifamily. Very rarely will that happen. And without a whole lot of heartache and headache. Like, for me to do that, it would have to be such a big transition in building stuff and adding stuff, and so many things could go wrong. You just took something that is really super simple.
Right.
You just saw this is just, it has tired owner written all over it.
Right.
That doesn't understand it as a true business. Right.
Right. And that's right. That's the whole story right there. You just nailed it.
And you see this time and time again.
Yeah, there are so a great acquisition team in the mobile home park space can actually have a list of deals I won't say they're all that good because that's an exception to the
right.
to the
I mean,
average.
this is your cherry that you put on top, but there's
Yeah.
still, if that's the best, I'll take average at that point.
That's my whole point, and that's what we love to invest in.
Sometimes I get people on my podcast that make me rethink what I'm doing.
Oh no, I don't want to do that. You're so good at what you do, Corey.
Well,
Come
and
on.
so this is like one of those things where I always think to myself, is there an easier way to the cash? Because I am a student. I've always been a student, and I love multifamily. But what you're saying is intriguing the hell out of me right now, because I think that I look at where we're at in the marketplace. Now, let's talk about the future. How do you see the future? Like, what do you see going on? And let's talk about it from the multifamily side, in your opinion, and then also what you think about it in your mobile home park side, because I think there's two different versions of what's probably going to what's going to happen.
You bet. So this could be a long answer. I try to be as succinct as I can. So I love multifamily demographics. First of all, you got baby boomers, the smallest group of multifamily renters, but the fastest growing. And statistics say when they move from ownership to renting, on average, they'll never go back to ownership again. So you've got the baby boomers, 77 million strong, moving into more multifamily. You got millennials moving, they're 80 million strong, and they on average like to rent more than own. Why should they be tied down to a 30-year contract for something when they might have new friends, new jobs, new opportunities across town or across the country next year? You've got Gen Z. So far, the indicators are that they want to rent more than buy, and they've got record student debt coming out of school as well. On top of that, you've got immigration. Now, immigration is playing an increasing role in the U.S. economy. Immigrants, on average, decide to rent more than own, and they rent for much, much longer than people who originated in the United States. So multifamily's demographic trends are tremendous. Fannie and Freddie say there have been virtually no large foreclosures in the multifamily space for years. And so it's a great place to be. It's the perfect investment. But the problem is it's not perfect if you have to overpay to get it. And you are in the perfect place, my friend, because Brian Burke and I were talking the other day about the mass of people coming from LA and San Francisco to Arizona. Did you know you can rent a U-Haul? I don't have the exact numbers with me, but I think the U-Haul rental from LA to Scottsdale is like $2,000, $2,100. But the 26-foot from Scottsdale back to LA is $279. That's all. And I think the point is there's a mass migration to Arizona, and people that were paying $3,000 for a one-bedroom in LA, what can they get for a third of that, or for $1,000 in Scottsdale? They can probably get a two-bedroom apartment, right?
Yes, and that's exactly what's happening. Inflation is coming, and it's real just because of that, because of the migration of people. And it's happening across the country, but specifically in the Phoenix market, Dallas market, all the jobs, just follow the jobs. And so it's crazy time.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. But,
so multifamily is awesome.
But you're right, Paul. That's what I see as well. Here's my only caveat too, is I still think there was a lot of the buzzword for a good couple years is multi. Every single family fix and flip event that I've been to, it's like the badge that everybody wants to wear is, well, I'm getting into multis. And what I've seen is a lot of new operators, probably not seasoned, probably they've come into the marketplace and they probably overpaid a little bit, and they didn't get capitalized enough. And so I think that's the opportunity to not overpay, but you got to find those needles in the haystack.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Because it is. I'm seeing stuff trade 1970s products for 5 caps.
Yeah. Wow.
And I don't see how that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Financially, I'm just like, how does this work, right? Mm-hmm. But it's happening all over the town. Mm-hmm. And then I go into like what you're saying on the mobile home side. That's a different story. You're buying at regular cap rates, right?
Yeah, I mean, on the one I just explained to you, you might be surprised, but we bought it on a trailing cap rate at 7.5%, which, let's say that's pretty good. but we sold it at a 5.8 cap, which is not horrible. So I guess what I'm saying is the original seller and the new buyer both got reasonable deals. They weren't out of range. It wasn't like it was a 12 cap or a 3 cap.
Right, because it's all about the income story, right? So,
yes, that's exactly right.
How consistent, what you did was made a nice, more consistent income that a new operator looked at this and said, hey, this is a momentum play. All I need, I can come in and assume this cash flow and this income, and a lot of the other stuff, the infrastructure has been done, and
right.
I can just ride this thing out. A lot of investors, big money, is looking for a coupon clipper.
That's right. Well, look, if he could fill those 50 spaces, and I'm not saying he could do it in a year, but let's say it took 3 years. If he can fill those 50 vacant spaces, he's adding 200 to 250,000 a year to his income. That's net operating income. Well, do the math on that. That's an increase in value of what, $4 million?
Yeah, it's real
money. So he didn't get a terrible deal.
Yeah. There was meat left on the bone still, and you were able to make a hefty profit as well. And that's winning, right?
Right. Yeah. So let me finish my answer by talking about the demographics of mobile home parks. So first of all, you've got an asset that generally can't be moved. 93% of mobile homes that go on a park pad never leave there until they're hauled away to the dump many decades later. Number two, you've got tenants who are partnering with you because you own the lot, the land, and they own the home. So even with the eviction laws, think about this. The eviction moratorium says they don't have to pay the $300 a month. You can't evict them. But if you do, when that eviction moratorium's lifted soon, if you evict them, they're going to lose their $40,000 or $50,000 home in the process, because chances are if they can't pay $350 a month for lot rent, they're not going to be able to spend $6,000 to move that mobile home down the road. So these are essentially in-place assets, and the people fight to keep them. The average tenant of an apartment stays how long? A year or two? Yeah. The average tenant of a mobile home park stays at least 13 years, and their home stays much, much longer than that. There's an affordable home crisis, affordable housing crisis in America right now. Here's an example. 10,000 people turn 65 every day, Corey, and yet only 4 of the 10,000 have $10,000 or more saved for retirement. So 6 out of 10 have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. You and I are on this podcast to try to help a lot of people make sure they don't end up there. But the point is, there's a lot of people there. Well, a lot of them have home equity, and that's locked up in a home. They might be willing to trade that home equity for a much cheaper lifestyle in an apartment or a mobile home park. And a lot of them are choosing mobile home parks right now as well as apartments. And so that is causing an increase in demand. You'd think there'd be an increase in supply. No. NIMBYism, not in my backyardism, says there are no mobile home parks to speak of being built in the U.S.
Yeah, I don't see them ever created, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not yet. So that's not in my backyard. You're right.
It's the one asset class that we know of that has an increasing demand but a decreasing supply every year. And so that's causing even more excitement. Another thing that's happening is cap rate compression due to institutionals. Blackstone, Sam Zell, Sun Communities, others are jumping in to mobile home parks. They have been for years. Blackstone just made a big splash in September with a large institutional purchase. But think about this, Corey. You can buy a 500-unit apartment complex. What would that cost? Maybe $50 to $100 million? Maybe.
Yeah, right.
It's very hard to find a mobile home park of that price. And so it's virtually unheard of to write a $50 million check, like institutionals like Blackstone like to do, for a mobile home park. So somebody has to take a bunch of small mom and pops, pull them together, make them into a beautiful franchise package, and sell them. And that's something people like you and I can do, because it's not that hard to buy a 100-unit park and upgrade it and then sell it for a lot more money, as we just talked about. So there's all these factors that are coming together. And this is why I love the other white meat, mobile home parks.
I'm sold. Where do I get some of that?
Come on in, man. The water's fine. Bring your Jeep.
And that's a great transition. So, because I always like to give the why do we do it scenario in my podcast of talking about, listen, when we strive to make income and wealth and things like that, it's really what do you do for fun factor that I think is the most important, because there's got to be a balance. If you work, and that's all you ever do, a hustle and grind, life can get really boring and short. So, Paul, what do you like to do for fun?
3 years ago, I was on the BiggerPockets podcast, and they asked me that question. I was almost speechless because I've spent 30 years as an entrepreneur and worked far, far more than I should have. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And I was quite taken aback by it. And of course, I remembered that I had just scheduled a Canadian fishing trip with my son. We've done 7 of them. And I said, I'd like to go fishing in Canada. Yeah. And that was my answer. But I got to tell you, and this is a real serious note for a kind of a fun podcast, I actually am quite concerned about America and about COVID and about all the stuff that's happening to us that's outside of our control right now. And I told my family, I said, if we got something we want to do in the next 5 or 10 years, let's just do it this year. Come on. So I bought a Yamaha 250 dirt bike the other day. And my wife was surprised when I showed up with it. I actually just went to look at it, but I brought it home. And from a neighboring state. They're hard to get right now. You can't even get a new one or a used one hardly. But I got a dirt bike. I'm talking about, we're doing some Jeeping. My son bought a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and he's buying a 4-wheeler. We're going to do some of that. So we're looking to do some stuff like that and kind of bring the future into 2021. How about you?
Man, it's the same. Listen, everybody knows I'm an avid Jeep guy. Like I'm nuts about Jeeps and going rock crawling. What I've learned is to get your family involved. Find something that you kind of like to do and put some resources behind it. So my daughter has a Jeep. I have a Jeep. My son's turning 16 in 6 months. He just got his permit, right?
Wow.
I'm giving them my Jeep. And they gave me a really good excuse, Paul, to go buy another one.
Nice.
Right? So now I've got 3 Jeeps. I've got a car lot I'm the Jeep dealership. But what we found is that we love doing that together because it's kind of like going exploring. So I've learned, and this was hard because I'm not like you, Paul. I am a go get it. When I get focused, move out of the way, I got blinders on. And it has been a real journey to learn how to take the blinders off and look around and smell the roses. And I found that my wife really likes it when I do it, and my kids love it. And so I've just challenged myself now to say, every year before we start, I plan all my family stuff, my vacations, and then I put my business on top, and it's got to fit in the cracks.
That's great.
That's how we do it, man.
That's good stuff. You're in that collective genius, right? They talk about that kind of stuff, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do. And actually, I left that group about 2 years ago. Great group, by the way. Great group. Any of those think tanks are good, right? But I've found that I've gravitated more as I'm 47 now, and I've just found that if the groups that I belong to now, they all talk this same theory is don't forget to smell the roses along. Build your ideal life as you go, not when you get there. And it's hard to do, but it just takes discipline, like anything else we've ever done in our lives. Once you get disciplined to the structure and then you follow the rules, good things seem to always come out of that.
Yeah.
And new friendships and people are like, listen, Paul, you got a motorcycle? I'm telling you right now, I already know it. You're going to come to Phoenix, because everybody comes to Phoenix, and then you're going to call me up and we're going to get on a Jeep and we're going to go exploring and go do some cool rock stuff.
That is awesome. Well, so one of my best friends just moved from Colorado to Phoenix. In fact, he might run for governor of Colorado in a couple of years. And so you'll definitely be seeing me there.
There you go. Rock and roll. Listen, guys, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. If people want to learn more about where to find you and what you guys do and what your company does, where do they go?
They can find me on BiggerPockets, but they can also find me at my company's website, wellingscapital.com. We've got some fun materials on like getting started in mobile home park investing, for example. And it's WELLINGS capital.com.
Cool. I might have to go to that website right now and check it out.
All right, buddy.
Hey guys, listen, if you enjoy this type of content, listen, you are in the right spot. People like Paul will help guide you and mentor you, give you nuggets and clues on how to get it. But before you start any of that, what matters more importantly is what you think and believe. Guys, if you believe it, you can achieve it, and your paradise is possible.